Hello and welcome to LFC Focus. So Liverpool are taking on Arsenal this Sunday in what is their first big game of the Premier League campaign so far. And going into the match, my own thoughts on how it's going to go, it really is hard for me to tell because, being honest, if we hadn't played those two games against Hoffenheim and we'd only played two matches this season like Arsenal had, then I could honestly say, hand on heart, without a shadow of a doubt, 100% sure in what I'm saying, that I think Liverpool would snot Arsenal. I think if we hadn't had those extra games to give us the fatigue that I think will be coming off the back of those matches, then I think we could absolutely do Arsenal easily. But it's impossible to underestimate how much of an influence I think those games will have on Liverpool, because Arsenal will have had a whole week's recovery time after their loss against Stoke. They will have had a whole week's recovery time as well for the game against Leicester. So they've only played two games and Liverpool have played four in exactly the same time. It is simple as that, and I think that will have an effect on how things go. And also the main problem for me is that even though I expect us to make changes, I'll come on to how I think Liverpool are actually going to line up starting 11-wise for the match a little bit later in the video. I do expect us to make changes, but the problem that we have at the moment is we simply can't make those changes without, maybe sometimes it doesn't influence the quality of the side, but it will certainly always influence how we actually play, because there are no real like-for-like replacements in the squad at the moment. It's not like, say, if we had Coutinho and Lallana, I'd say if we dropped out Coutinho and put Lallana into the starting 11, it wouldn't make too much of a difference because they're kind of similar in playing style at least. Liverpool don't have any players like that, so I expect them to make changes, and because of that, I expect them to play slightly different to how they played against Hoffenheim. So speaking of changes and how I think the team are going to line up, the injury news going into this game is mostly positive, really. Obviously, we're still missing Lallana. There's no Phil Coutinho because the transfer window isn't over, basically, is my opinion on it, really. And whether or not the Barca saga is dead or not, it still makes sense to keep him out of the limelight. But if he is still carrying an injury, then fair play to him. But I do think once the window's over and once that injury, if it does exist, has subsided, I expect him to come back into the Liverpool side. But for now, at least, Coutinho is unavailable. But onto the players who are available for this game. Emre Can, who apparently got a little bit of a knock in the game against Hoffenheim, is available for this match. Trent Alexander-Arnold, who had a dead leg and obviously came off about an hour into the game against Hoffenheim, he is apparently now fine for this game, and so is Wijnaldum, who is back from Holland after the birth of, I think it's his third child. It might be, not entirely sure, but congrats to him, congrats to the Wijnaldum family, and very lovely of Genie to make the flight back to Liverpool to try and feature in this game. So on to how I think Liverpool will actually line up for this match. In goal, it's one of the easiest ones to call. It is Simon Mignolet, because he's had a pretty good start to the season, and while he has conceded a fair few goals along the way, to be honest, I don't really blame him for any of them. There was no point in any of the goals we've conceded so far this season in competitive games where I've looked at it and thought, to be honest, Mignolet could have done better there. Even the ones against Watford, I don't necessarily blame him for it. I think other players were at fault for a lot of the situations that led to goals that we've conceded so far this season. So Mignolet had a great start to the season, so he definitely keeps his place for me. Centre-back duo, Joel Matip is an obvious one. I mean, he has played every minute of the season so far. He's already played 6 hours of football after less than 2 weeks of the season, which is just mad. But quite simply, we need Joel Matip. We can't afford to drop him. He's dead good at football. He's dead good at defending. We can't afford to drop him for this game. Dejan Lovren, I think, will probably partner him. Personally, I'd like to see Ranjar Klavan because he did very well against Crystal Palace. And I think with Alexandre Lacazette being a key threat for Arsenal in this game, Ranjar Klavan is a player who relishes that battle with the centre forwards. So I'd like to see Ranjar Klavan in this game. But basically, my head says Dejan Lovren, my heart says Ranjar Klavan. I want to see Klavan, but I just, for some reason, I think that Dejan Lovren is the player that Jurgen Klopp will opt for. But again, it's hard to tell. That's one which I think is slightly up in the air. It's not possible to tell certainly who will actually start for Liverpool at centre-back alongside Joel Matip. Right back, I think, will be Joe Gomez. I mentioned Alexander-Arnold earlier and how, despite the fact he came off early against Hoffenheim, he is technically fit for this game. But I think Liverpool are doing a job very well in terms of managing Trent Alexander-Arnold at the moment, because we've seen in the past with players like Michael Owen or Wayne Rooney, players who have reached the age of 18 and are already good enough to play Premier League football. But the thing with those players is they got overworked. They were played too often because they were good enough, and it's affected them later on in their career and has meant that they haven't quite got the athleticism they had at the start of their careers. So I think it makes sense that Liverpool are managing Trent Alexander-Arnold very, very carefully at the moment and making sure he doesn't burn out later on in his career. So I don't think Trent will start this game. I think it'll be Joe Gomez over him, which I've got no problems with, really, because coming up against Arsenal, while we are obviously an attacking side, we love to get forward, we love our fullbacks to get forward, as well. It makes sense that we're going to have to go backs to the wall at some point in this game. I think we are going to have to do a fair bit of defending. And while Joe Gomez doesn't offer as much going forward as maybe a player like Trent Alexander-Arnold does, he is reasonably sound defensively. I've got no problems with the way he defends. He's a centre-back by trade, so he knows what he's doing at that end of the pitch. So I think Joe Gomez will start this game at right back. And then left back for me, it's Andrew Robertson. He had a great game against Crystal Palace. And while Moreno did do well against Hoffenheim, so that maybe there's a few shouts for him to keep his place, and while Andrew Robertson is being, like Alexander-Arnold, I think very carefully managed, very carefully integrated into the squad so he doesn't get overwhelmed too quickly, he was just very good against Crystal Palace. And I think with Sadio Mane being slightly tired from the Hoffenheim game, and Sadio Mane, I think he started all of our games so far this season, it makes sense to have someone like Andrew Robertson on the left who can do a bit of bombing up and down the touchline, just so that Sadio Mane can maybe cut inside every now and then, doesn't have to do as much running, and we can hopefully keep him on the pitch for a bit longer, and he can be able to influence the game for a bit longer. So I think we'll have Robertson on that left-hand side. Again, no problems with that. I think he was dead good against Crystal Palace, and hopefully he can turn in another good performance. Onto the midfield, Henderson keeps his place for me, no problems there. Emre Can, I mentioned he came back from that knock that he apparently got against Hoffenheim, so he starts his game as well for me. And then I think Milner will probably come in for Wijnaldum. No huge reasons for that, because while Wijnaldum has had not a great start to the season, he was very good against Hoffenheim. He massively improved on his previous performances, but I think simply for the sake of rotation and for the sake of having a little bit more energy in the midfield and maybe saving Henderson and Emre Can from a little bit of work so they don't get burnt out, I think Milner's going to come in midfield. Again, no problems there. He played very well against Crystal Palace. He's done well so far this season, so I'm looking forward to seeing him in this game against Arsenal should he start. And then finally, the front three, there's no surprises here. It's Sadio Mane, it's Bobby Firmino, and it's Mo Salah. Yes, they are going to be a little bit tired from the amount of games they've played, but simply put, they're just dead good. They're just dead good at football. And I mean, any Liverpool fan who's a little bit worried about this game and is slightly worried about how Arsenal could take the game to us and how good their attack is and everything, think about how Arsenal fans feel at the moment, thinking about Mo Salah, Bobby Firmino and Sadio Mane coming up against a defence that conceded 3 against Leicester. They must be absolutely terrified at the moment. So that front three absolutely has to start for me. We'll probably see Sadio Mane, I think, will probably come off at some point to save his energy. But I think they all start the game because they are just that good. So taking a look at Arsenal then, obviously they've had a very shaky start to the season as well. And because they've only played 2 games, whereas Liverpool have played 4, their fans have had less of a chance really to gauge how things are going for Arsenal. I think because we've played 4 matches, we've had enough of a look at Liverpool to kind of have an idea of where we're at the moment and realise how good the team is playing at the moment. And obviously after the Hoffenheim game, spirits are very high because we've seen just how good this Liverpool team can play at the moment. But Arsenal fans haven't had as much of a look at their team, so I think it's a bit difficult to actually gauge how well they're going to play in this game. And that's another reason for me that it's quite difficult to actually know how it's going to go, because we haven't seen that much of Arsenal this season, and what we have seen has been very much a mixed bag. Obviously against Leicester, they were very poor defensively, but they were fantastic going forward. They got 4 goals and conceded 3 in that match. Against Stoke, their soft underbelly was exposed a little bit when Hesse scored, and they got forward okay against Stoke. There were a lot of penalty shouts. They still created a few chances, and they had a goal ruled out correctly for offside. So Arsenal have been very much a mixed bag at the moment, so it's kind of difficult to tell how they are going to play going into this game. But in terms of team news, Laurent Koscielny will be back for this game. He served his 3-match ban, so I think that will be a huge boost for them in defence, because up until now they've been playing Monreal at the centre of a back 3, and putting a left back in the middle of a back 3 is just a bit mad, to be honest. So I think Koscielny will come in for him in that back 3. Alexis Sanchez is, according to Arsene Wenger, back for this game, which is bad news for Liverpool. Hopefully, fingers crossed, his mindset isn't quite right, because obviously there's been a very long saga going on this summer about his contract and about him potentially going to Man City or going to a club abroad like PSG or something like that. And also, given that he's only just coming back into the first team, hopefully he won't quite be at his top level, because in all honesty, while I talked about how good Liverpool's front 3 is, the idea of a front 3 of Ozil, Lacazette and Sanchez coming up against our defence, it scares me just a little bit. Just a little bit. It does put the fear of God into me. So hopefully Sanchez won't start, and if he does, which it sounds like he will do for this game, he won't be at 100%. An interesting one for me going into this game though is to see whether Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain starts, because obviously there's been some revelations about him today. Apparently he's refusing to sign a contract for 180k a week. He's told Wenger that it isn't about the money. That's not why he wants to leave Arsenal. I don't don't know whether it's trophies or first team football or playing in his ideal position, but Liverpool are obviously one of 2 teams that have been named as potential suitors for Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, Chelsea being the other one. So it will be interesting to see whether he starts this game, and if he doesn't, who takes his spot at right wing back. So one to keep an eye on there, I think. So while, like I said, it's a tough one to call for me, it's really hard to say whether or not I think Liverpool will win this game or not. There is no team out there in the world that Liverpool can't beat when we're playing on our day. So here are 3 reasons why I think we will beat Arsenal. And starting off on that kind of topic, Liverpool are just dead good at football. I mean, yes, we've had a shaky start to the season. It has, kind of like Arsenal have had, a mixed bag so far. We've had the game against Watford, but we had the ace performance against Hoffenheim. But at the end of the day, this is a big match. And while it is a cliche, while I think I do maybe mention it a bit too much on this channel, especially in the 3 reasons why we'll beat them segment, it is not to be underestimated just how good Liverpool are in big games. I mean, I was thinking about it earlier, and I'm pretty sure, correct me in the comments if I'm wrong on this, but I am 99% sure that over the whole of Jurgen Klopp's tenure, which is nearly 2 years now, Liverpool have never lost against another team from the top 6 over the course of 90 minutes. And that is a huge stat. And it does fill you with confidence going into this game. And also another important thing to remember is that in terms of recent memory, and since Jurgen Klopp became our manager, it's tough to actually think of a big game against the top 6 when Liverpool haven't shown up and Liverpool haven't performed to the best of their ability. I mean, barring the Sevilla game and the League Cup final against Man City and maybe the semi-final in the League Cup against Southampton as well, I really can't think of a single game where Liverpool went into a match and we considered it a big game or an important game and we didn't come out and think Liverpool were good in that game. You know, there's never been a game where we've come out and thought, you know, we didn't perform to the best of our ability there. The performance just wasn't good enough. Obviously, the result is a different matter entirely, but simply based on performances, Liverpool will always turn up for these big games. So I back them 100% to turn up for this match, whether or not they're tired, whether or not they need to rotate the squad. We will still put in a fairly decent performance in this game, I think. And secondly, I think Arsenal will leave themselves open at the back at some point during this game. I mean, they have switched to a back 3 since they last played us at Anfield, and obviously when they played against us at Anfield, their back line was hugely exposed by the fact that they played a high line and tried to go toe-to-toe with Liverpool at Anfield. Wenger was hugely criticised for his approach and his game plan for that game after the match. So I think they will be a little more reserved. They'll probably look to defend a little bit more. But at the end of the day, Arsenal will fancy themselves for 3 points in this game. And so there will be times when they look to push forward and their defence will push higher and higher up the pitch. And we saw against Hoffenheim, who also played a back 3 and also played a high defensive line, we saw what Liverpool's attack can do against them. We absolutely tore Hoffenheim apart with their back 3, so hopefully we can do the same against Arsenal. And finally, Sadio Mane. Need I say more? Sadio Mane is a huge boost for Liverpool in this game, and I think, to be honest, he is probably our most likely match winner for this game, simply because he's kind of like our Sanchez figure. And ever since Luis Suarez left Liverpool, I've always been jealous of Arsenal and the fact that they had Alexis Sanchez. They had that player who, whenever they were up against it and whenever they just needed one single moment to win a match or to get 3 points that they desperately needed, by and large, Alexis Sanchez was always there to score the goal that Arsenal needed. And I think Liverpool finally have their answer to that in Sadio Mane. We finally have a player who is capable of changing matches with one touch of the ball. We saw it against Crystal Palace. We saw it against Watford when we were playing terribly and Sadio Mane pulled us back into the game with our first goal of the match. So I think Sadio Mane, even though he's a little bit tired, even though he will be fatigued going into this game and he probably won't be able to perform to the best of his ability, he is still dead good at football, and I would still back him to make the difference for Liverpool in this game, especially given that I think it will be tight, and like I said, it is a very tough one to call. So like I said, it is very difficult to say whether or not Liverpool will win this game, and to be honest, I think we'll only really have a decent idea when it gets to about an hour before the match and the team sheets come out, because once those 2 teams are in front of us, once you can see the Liverpool starting 11 and the Arsenal starting 11, only then do I think we'll be able to actually say, I think that team are going to beat that team. Whether that's Liverpool beating Arsenal or Arsenal beating Liverpool, I don't know yet. It's really tough to tell, and I think by the time we get to Sunday afternoon, that is only when we will know whether or not Liverpool will win this game. But I am still optimistic. Like I said, there are no team out there in the world that Liverpool can't beat, so here's hoping we can get the 3 points. So that is all for the pre-match video. Don't forget to stick around for the FIFA 17 predictor. That will be out later tonight. If you haven't subscribed to the channel already, then hit that subscribe button there. Check out some of the other videos that have been out on the channel in the past few days. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it as well. Follow at LFC Focus TV on Twitter for all the latest updates, news and in-game commentary as well. And I'll see you in a bit. Bye for now.